What does COVID, a new editing program, a career swap, and moving have in common? They all prevent me from making YouTube videos. But who cares about that? I have a new favorite light novel series to talk about, one that has very little fan service, and the best waifu doesn't even have a humanoid appearance.
Blink 3 times if you need help.
Quick aside before getting into things, get Elden Ring. This game is sick. Does it have waifus? No. Do I think it's more fun than Nioh 2? No. Why am I recommending it? No. But for the first time since God knows how long, a game that was crazy hyped has actually met the expectations of consumers. I don't care for most open world games because they're built around an investment in the setting, and to me that isn't a given. A game has to earn me wanting to explore with its core experience before I'm willing to commit to like 60 hours of slapping walls to find a single hidden door. But Elden Ring? Yeah. Also, I lied. Not the softest of waifus, but we work with what we got. Anyways, video. Okay, the show I'm talking about is called Kumo Desu ga Nani ka, or So I'm a Spider, So What. This was a surprise hit for me. I watched the anime when it premiered during the 2021 winter anime season for shits and giggles, and I was hooked almost immediately, despite some clear flaws of the TV production.
Oh, Christ!
Now, I was patiently waiting for a season 2 that might never come. Then COVID swept me away like a gentle flowing wave of sore throats and nausea and fatigue. So I was like, fuck it, I'll read the goddamn books. It's not like the damn thing is gonna be that much better.
Give me that!
I think I like this series more than Overlord. Liking the story about a weird reclusive girl reincarnated as a tiny spider more than the tales of a random Japanese salaryman turned into the Bone Daddy, and the story of him accidentally taking over the world with a team that includes a virgin yandere succubus as well as a masochistic priest vampire, all while the story makes you painfully aware of all the well-meaning people who are inevitably going to be vaporized by this nuclear warhead of a faction that suddenly appeared out of thin air.
Call my therapist.
I'm still surprised. But surprisingly enough, these two stories have much more in common than I expected. The basic premise is exactly what the title said it was. A schoolgirl is, after a huge explosion in her class, reincarnated as a tiny level 1 spider monster in a fantasy world with game-like rules, stats, levels, the whole 9 yards. But before she can process any of this, she must immediately fight for her life because of the 1,000 cannibalistic brothers and sisters all around her. Oh, and on top of all of that, she was also born in what is basically a Dark Souls poison dungeon, so food is a bit spicy right now. Already I'm rooting for little Kumo-chan, which is a far cry from most isekai protagonists and their I show up with my cheat skill and I'm immediately surrounded by F-cup waifus setup.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I like the OP isekai protagonist, but I do think that the struggle to reach that level is a key part of its appeal, obviously with some exceptions. Kumo here encapsulates that concept though, with a large portion of the story taking place in this hostile dungeon. The viewer's journey with her is a slow burn, starting with her at level 1, facing level 1 problems like basic food and shelter, before escalating over and over and over again, with the difficulty curve getting harder and harder every time she gets too comfortable with her situation.
A few moments later.
Now, as much as I like the concept, that might not be enough for people with a bias against standard isekai tropes. But what I do think will win most people over is Kumo-chan herself. She is amazing to watch interact with this fantasy world. Aoi Yuki fucking killed it in this role, adding another amazing character to her impressive record. And it's not just her explosive reactions to events that are fun to watch. This character is really high up there in terms of what I think are the best NEET protagonists. Shows like No Game No Life portray a glamorized version of NEETs, with Blank's whole ultimate gamer who's super confident and charismatic but just can't handle large crowds shtick. But Kumo plays this character type far more truthfully, with her having a very explosive and all over the place thought process that gets smothered by a crippling lack of social skills. This doesn't come into play that often early on because she can't talk and her only companions are feral monsters out to eat her, but this only accentuates her character type, as we instead get to hear all of the crazy and weird thoughts that run through her head, how she's constantly complaining about life, making insensitive remarks about the things that she sees, and throwing in some self-reflection that she ultimately never follows through with.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes.
This off-the-wall personality is really shown off though in the ED song, where Aoi Yuki gets to flex her skills and rap, yes I said rap, about her character's struggle against this world. And this sort of character type is even cashed in with the second ED, where the story has finally progressed to the point where Kumo-chan has reached her OP protagonist state, and the song, still being sung by the main character, now becomes a rock track, with Aoi Yuki singing about how she, against all odds, survived and is now ready to slaughter anyone who stands in her way. Like, you can literally feel the pride flowing through her veins at beating the system. And despite all this, despite all the struggles she overcame, when forced into a regular vocal conversation, she still gets stomach aches. I can't believe I'm saying this, but my favorite waifu might now be a tiny 2-inch spider with virtually no humanoid traits. And that's not all this story provides. Kumo also shares the story with her other classmates, who, while not living on hard mode like she was, were also isekai'd and do face their own struggles and conflicts in this fantasy land. This part of the story fleshes out the world a lot more, since they weren't reincarnated into monsters, and introduces the political themes of the story, the factions all up against each other, the mysterious demons that plague the land, the secret society of elves, and the church that oversees the shining beacon of humanity that is the hero. Similar to Overlord, this story is full of world building. This isn't the story of a handful of characters simply saving the world. It's a story of how the world changes because of a handful of characters and how everyone in that world must adjust to the changing times. Now, I'll be frank, it doesn't go as far as Overlord does, but I didn't expect it to. I mean, that series is so full of lore and world building that I think you could feasibly make a game without the main cast and still pull it off. Speaking of which, the anime isn't perfect though, particularly in the visuals category. A lot of things being in 3D isn't ideal to say the least, and later on in the anime there is a noticeable dip in quality to the point that the final episode got outright delayed, but it's nothing deal breaking in terms of a good watching experience. The biggest problem I had with the anime though is something that just plagues anime in general, to the point that I don't think it's possible to solve, that being, it's an adaptation of a light novel.
What does that have to do with it?
There are no good adaptations of light novels, period. I didn't always believe that because, well, I love the Overlord anime. I adore the Accel World anime, a story made by the creator of Sword Art Online that is vastly superior to it in every way, but that's talk for another time. And No Game No Life might be my favorite anime of all time. But then I read the novels they're all based on. Anime adaptations are like making a deal with that guy from the best Disney movie no one watched. You get all your favorite scenes animated, but you most definitely lose something in exchange for it. And this is unique to light novels because anime adaptations of manga can be phenomenal, to the point that in certain cases they can be the superior way to experience the story. But so far it seems that anime production teams just haven't figured out a way to properly translate the experience of a light novel onto the screen. Like, Toaru Index's anime can make a big point of Toma turning around to go save the priestess in danger, but it can't put the raw emotion into it like the books did.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
But hey, that's just the strength of the medium. Like, no matter how good the various anime Fate properties are, nothing can come close to the emotional hit of the original visual novel bringing up the choice screen and all the options being, say fucking Ilya. So I'm not saying that light novel adaptations are bad, I'm just saying that light novels will always be better. I like Kumo the anime, but I love Kumo the novel. In book form is where this story truly shines, partially because, if I'm being honest, all the best parts happen after the point where the anime ends. Like, for context, the first part of the anime reaches to about the 3rd volume, whereas the second part gets to the 5th. So it took 24 episodes to get little more than a third of the way through a story that isn't even finished. That's really disappointing because that means this will probably never get fully animated, and the later volumes are full of things that I would love to see animated, from exciting action scenes to very emotional moments, and even some fanservice spider bondage. It makes sense in context. Also, there is a character in the later novels that Kumo-chan only refers to as boobs, so getting her animated would be wonderful as well. The early portions of the light novel are mostly the same, so I will give the anime credit on that, the biggest difference being merely the order of events, as the anime jumps to the kingdom side far quicker. In the light novel, the early books are almost entirely Kumo-chan focused, but they do have 1 or 2 little short stories from the various kingdom side characters per volume. I've seen some complaints that the kingdom side of the anime was boring, and I did kinda share that feeling on my initial watch. In the novels though, the human story is indeed much more interesting because of how deeply the books go into the thoughts of the individual characters. Katya, especially as a man who is reincarnated into a female body, is a character that loses a lot of complexity without that, as while the story doesn't make it a huge character defining conflict, it does give the concept more time than just, ooh I got turned into a girl. Speaking of Katya, while the art style of the anime did feel a bit generic, the light novel is far more unique. I can't say I initially loved how rough and sketched out Tsukasa Kiryu's illustrations were, but I did grow to appreciate the style over time. Another strength of the series as a whole is the way it takes existing isekai concepts and energizes them. It doesn't parody them outright, at least most of the time, but it does put in the legwork to make these ideas really pop. Like how the hero versus demon lord dynamic works, the idea of a world ran by RPG logic complete with a voice telling people they have leveled up, even the concept of the stereotypical harem protagonists are introduced as things the characters consciously think about and question, lending even more mystery to this world and how it works. Mysteries that seem to have real explanations waiting farther into the story. And that kind of leads to a problem I have making this video. There is so much that I would love to talk about in how the story deviates from the norms, how the characters evolve into something greater, but that would involve spoiling large swaths of the later parts of the story, which in my opinion kind of weakens the journey. The reveals are excellent, but that creeping confusion and the build-ups to those reveals? 10 out of 10. So I've been pretty much stuck just talking about the earlier segments. So because I can't say much more than what I already have, instead I'm gonna propose a simple question. What kind of person is Kumo Desu ga Nanika made to appeal to? And I'd say, if you like isekai stories, overpowered protagonists who don't start overpowered, long journeys with plenty of world building, and most importantly a story that isn't cut and dry good versus evil, then this is a story for you. I also somewhat obviously recommend this to fans of Overlord. It's not the same story, far from it, because I think Overlord is a really unique take on isekai, but there are some good parallels, and in some ways I do think Kumo does a couple of things better. Kumo-chan might at the end of the day be a tiny spider, but she also might be my favorite female anime protagonist of all time, and I highly recommend you guys give her a shot. Okay, that was a bit of a quick video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you've already watched Kumo-chan and if you find it as interesting as I clearly do. I'm gonna try to make time every so often so I can work on these videos. So in case you're wondering, I'm not dead, just busy. But yeah, with that, I'll see you guys next time. Mata ne.